welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. This is not the show where we teach you how to read an introduction well. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and with me as always is Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo. And we have a guest tonight, Anna Hackett. She is a science fiction romance author who has written the Phoenix Adventures, the Anomaly series, and I think her latest series is Hell Squad, which we'll ask her about tonight. Anna, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. It's my first podcast.
All right, well, we'll set the standard really high, unlike on our other ones, but we'll try. So why don't you start out and tell us how you got started writing and why science fiction romance?
Okay, well, I was a reader first, so I wasn't ever one of those people that wanted to be a writer or dreamed of being a writer one day. But I was a huge reader, voracious reader, whatever I could get my hands on. So I eventually graduated to reading my mum's stack of romances, and when I could reach the shelf, my dad's action-adventure thrillers, so Clive Cussler, Wilbur Smith, books like that. And here I am today writing a very action-adventure based romance. So I guess my parents are to blame for my love of action-packed romance. I still remember the day I decided to try writing my own book. I was away on a work trip. I'm a mining engineer. I was up in Quebec, Canada, actually, at a gold mine, and I ran out of books to read. So I thought, you know what, I might try writing my own. So that's how I first got started. I started out writing paranormal romance. That was popular at the time. It was what I was reading. So that's where I started. So I sold a few short stories to Harlequin, and that's how I got started, and eventually moved on to writing some stories for Carina Press, which is another imprint, a digital first imprint of Harlequin. And and then moved into self-publishing. I self-published about at the same time I was writing for Carina, but pretty much now I'm exclusively self-publishing at the moment.
All right, that's so cool that you worked in mines, because fantasy and science fiction people are always in mines. So I don't know, it seems like every series has to have, like, I don't know, the hero is trapped as a slave in the mine and has to get out, or they got to run through some. Do you ever read those and go, those are so fake, those people don't know what they're talking about?
No. Well, sometimes, but I guess the reality of mining isn't really it's not as exciting or glamorous as what people think. So, or being deep underground isn't quite, what they imagine. But I've probably got a little bit of mining into some of my stories, but I haven't gone all out and incorporated mining. I don't know. I guess I want to write what's super interesting to me, and while I find mining engineering very interesting, usually I would be escaping from that when I would sit down to write. So.
All right, totally understandable. I'm kind of curious, since you started out with Carina Press is pretty big and well known for their romance, and did you say Harlequin?
Yeah, so Harlequin, is obviously the largest romance publisher in the world, and Carina is a part of Harlequin. So okay. Harlequin are mainly known for their Mills and Boon, a lot of the imprints, that have been very popular over the years. I was targeting initially the paranormal imprint, Nocturne. So they started out publishing some short stories. So they were 15,000 words. They were called Nocturne Bites, digital only. So there was actually a online pitch competition. You could pitch your story, and I'd never written a short story, but I thought, hey, can't be too hard. Little did I know, but they bought that story, and I went on to write a few other stories for them, which was great. I learned a lot about the editing process. I had a great editor, and learned a lot about going through the editing process. And yeah, they didn't sell that great. They were very short, and they're still very expensive. So, but it was a great learning experience, and eventually, like I said, moved on to Carina, and that's with Karina, I've published only science fiction romance. They had a call for submissions for a science fiction romance anthology mixing science fiction and the winter holidays, so Christmas and that kind of thing. So I thought, hey, that sounds like a weird combination. It might be fun. So so that was my first science fiction romance, which was a novella and came out in that anthology. Then after that, I decided to write the book that I really wanted to write, action adventure in space, and that was the first Phoenix Adventures, so treasure hunters in space with romance.
Cool. Well, I've read one of those novellas, and I can definitely say people should check out the series. I'm curious, what made you shift to self-publishing?
I was watching self-publishing, as people were starting to get some success there, and I guess the biggest trigger was when I sold At Star's End, the first Phoenix Adventures book, to Carina Press. It took just over a year from the day I sold it to release day, and that was a pretty agonizing wait, waiting to get a story out, and I could see for the future that one book every year and a half wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to get the books to the readers much quicker than that. And I guess the other thing, I actually wrote the Anomaly series, I think, Lindsay, which you mentioned, which is a little short series of novellas, again, action-packed romance. They were my test run of self-publishing. I just wanted to see what the process was, learn how to do it, make sure I could do it myself and have that option open to me if that was a direction I wanted to head. So that was, again, another great experience, and I fell in love with having absolute control. Control of the cover art, control of the schedule. So, and they didn't sell hugely well, but I was working full time and having babies, so life kind of interrupted. But at least I learned, I learned about getting covers done, working with editors, working with formatters, all that kind of stuff. So it was a great experience, and it meant I was ready to self-publish the rest of the Phoenix Adventures when the time came.
All right, that sounds like a lot of people who get started, I think, with small presses kind of feel restrained in a way and feel the draw of self-publishing a little bit in some way.
I think so. And like I said, I got to the point where I felt like, I could do it myself and I could do it quicker myself. So, I mean, look, I still think going with small presses or traditional publishers has a place, especially if you've got content that's suited for those channels, or you just don't have the time to get some certain books out properly through self-publishing. So, never say never. I might still go back, but right now, I'm having a lot of fun self-publishing and trying new things. So it's where I want to be at the moment.
All right. Well, I approve of your decision. I'm sure that you were concerned about that, but we haven't had anybody on before that does like science fiction romance. I don't think we've even had a paranormal romance person on strictly. So I'm kind of curious if you could talk about some of the challenges, if there are any that you see with putting like steamy romance and pairing it up with the action adventure stuff. Do you get readers that object, or does it make the niche smaller, do you think, or is it, I don't know.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. We say niche in Australia, so I'll say niche, but
Go right ahead.
I can't say niche. It doesn't work for me. It is a niche genre. It's not super huge, but I've seen some authors doing really well and having good success there. So I'm not sure it's as small as maybe we think it is. So some of those authors, I think, have some crossover with paranormal romance. So there's obviously a bit bigger pool of paranormal romance readers. I think there's certainly some tropes that are very popular, and my gut feel says that the successful science fiction romance authors at the moment have very strong romance, so that the R on the SFR is quite strong. So I think authors that are struggling, and in some of the author groups, the ones I hear talking about, it's so small, we have no visibility, they tend to have come from science fiction and maybe have some romantic elements in there, and maybe those books aren't resonating with that larger pool of, more purely romance readers. I came from romance, so the romance in my stories is very strong. It's a balancing act to get the action I want and have the romance. So you'll always displease someone, but I guess that's true of every genre. So but look, right now I think people with the stronger romance side are doing well. That's not to say that there's not some readers in there who want stronger science fiction with a dash of romance.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that I don't see any of the big publishers hardly at all doing science fiction romance, unless it's really more science fiction. Like I just finished Rachel Bach's trilogy.
Paradox, right?
Paradox, something. I read it all in like a weekend, so it was pretty good. But I'm already fuzzy on it. But and it seemed to really get a lot of reviews and sell well. So I'm always hoping that that was probably more heavy on the action adventure too than the romance. So I don't know. It's just I guess however you market it.
And look, I like to believe that science fiction romance will have its day one day. We haven't got there yet. So just like paranormal romance did, it was not a popular genre. The traditional publishers weren't publishing it, and then a few authors forged ahead, and then suddenly it exploded all over the place. So I like to think science fiction romance will have its day when the time is right. But I don't think we've gotten there yet. And like you said, the traditional publishers aren't really publishing a lot of science fiction romance. So the odd series or trilogy or whatever will come out here and there, but I usually see 2 books come out and then they die a slow death. So.
Well, at least it's an opportunity for you can be the big fish in the small pond kind of thing.
I'd like to be.
But I'm going to go ahead and pass you over to Jeff and then Joe to ask some more questions, and we'll swing back. We also have a marketing segment that we'd love to talk to you about.
Great.
Alrighty. You've mentioned that you've done a lot of self-publishing, as in pretty much all of us here. My question for you is what advice would you give authors looking to self-publish their first story? Is there anything you'd steer them clear of, or what would you say to, like, for instance, if you had the ability to talk to yourself back when you first started, what advice would you give yourself?
Gee, that's a good question, Jeff. I guess the biggest thing for me, I've gotten very serious about my self-publishing probably only in the last 6 months. Before that, I was, doing a bit here and there, but I wasn't very focused. I didn't have a strategy or a plan or anything like that. So, if I could go back and tell myself way back when what to do. The big part for me has been starting to listen to podcasts like this one. There's some other great self-publishing podcasts out there. I've been poring over successful indie authors' blogs and just seeing what's working for them. There's so many of them are generous with their information. I think at first I was trying to go it alone and come up with great ideas, and that sort of meant I wasn't doing anything. So it's really been, I haven't reinvented the wheel. I've pretty much been doing what Lindsay's been doing with her pen name, especially when I've launched my new series. And there's just so much great advice out there that we don't need to try and come up with great ideas ourselves. So make a list of successful indies, especially ones you enjoy reading, and in your genre especially, and make a list of things that you need to try doing. I haven't gotten to everything yet, but certainly the things I've been doing, I've been seeing good success with that in terms of my books launching better, finding more readers, growing my mailing list. So that would be my big piece of advice.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. Because essentially, once you write a book, as the self-published indie author, it's up to you if you want to be able to, get your books out there, because no one's going to do it for you. And thankfully, you can come across, like as you're saying, these other writers that are willing to share and say, hey, by the way, if you do this, this will help out. Or if you do that, and definitely pays to pay attention to them. But
Absolutely, and I think of it as that's part of the business side, is going out and researching what's working well, and I really am grateful that there's authors like you guys willing to share your experience and say, yep, this worked for me, no, this didn't work for me. So I've been spending a lot of time doing that, listening to podcasts. I think my 1-year-old has listened to more podcasts than any other baby in Australia at the moment. So yeah, and like I said, going over blogs, signing up for some newsletters for people that are sharing that information. So I was guilty before of just putting books out there and going, hey, how come I'm not getting like loads of sales? Oh, I'm supposed to buy promo. Okay, bought that, got a little blip, then nothing else happened. So I knew I wasn't doing it right, and I was complaining about not getting results, and I wasn't doing the things that other people were doing that were getting results. So yeah.
definitely. With regards to your self-publishing process, since you're doing it yourself, is there any one part that you found just stinks that you wish you didn't have to do, but yet you're forced to do it anyways? Like whether it's creating a cover, whether it's trying to write a book description, like summing up your book in like 2 or 3 paragraphs. For me, that's the worst. I can write a book, no problem. I have got somebody that does the cover for me, no problem. But when I'm forced to sit down and sum up my work in 3 paragraphs, I'll literally be going like this for the whole time, going, this sucks. I can't figure this one out.
Sorry, Jeff. I quite like writing the blurbs. They just sort of come out. So I don't have a problem with that. You know what? Over the last few months, I started to streamline and get rid of the things that I don't enjoy doing that are time consuming for me. So I don't format myself. I don't do my own cover art. Obviously, I'm heavily involved in what I want on there, but I came to the conclusion that I need to get the experts to do the stuff that I'm not expert at. So yeah, I don't know though if there's expert blurb writers out there. Maybe.
Well,
But
if you're easily able to write your own blurbs, then you are standing way the heck over most of us, because most of us are at an absolute loss when it comes to trying to do it ourselves there, because you've got to get it right, and for me, it's a very long process.
I think in romance there tends to be a bit of a formula of a paragraph about the hero, paragraph about the heroine, and then a paragraph about their struggle together. So romance readers seem almost to expect that. So it helps to have that framework. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe my blurbs aren't very good. So I don't know. I write them easily enough, but I have revamped a few. And as I see, again, other authors trying different things, successful authors, I might try and revamp and try something different in my blurb. So again, just stealing off people that are doing well.
I see that you have an impressive catalogs of books available for purchase. So my last question for you for right now anyways is, how often do you try to release a new title? Do you feel, I'll go ahead and answer that one first.
Okay, at the moment I feel like I'm in the building my brand and my foundation stage. Romance readers are pretty voracious, so they're not going to let you release, a couple of books a year. So I tend to write shorter. I started out writing short stories and moved on to novellas, and now I write some novellas and I write some long novellas / short novels, depending who you talk to. So that helps. So writing a bit shorter means I can get some more frequent releases out. And I like writing shorter. I write very action-packed, so I feel like if I had 100,000 words of very action-packed, in the romance genre, mightn't always go over well with my readers. So a little bit shorter seems to be working well for me. So this year I'm looking at 10 releases, and anything from short novellas to those short novels. So, and again, I don't want to keep that speed up forever. It's just in the first year or two of building my brand and my foundation in my subgenre. I'm planning to move into contemporary action romance, so sort of crossover with romantic suspense as well. But I was going to do that this year, but I feel like I need to give science fiction romance a little bit more attention before I move on to that. Maybe take some of those readers that I'm finding now with me, hopefully.
So do you feel authors with a larger selection of available titles have an easier time selling books versus those authors with only one or two under their belts?
Yes. But again, I think it depends on your genre. Romance, I think, having more regular releases and having a bigger backlist, romance readers will glom. They will go back and buy everything if they discover an author that they really, really love. So, so if you've got a healthy backlist, that's great. That's not to say that I don't think people releasing one or two books a year can't be successful. I just think they're going to have to do slightly different things to keep their brand and their name alive in between those releases. So.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense because I used to be one of the authors that only released one book a year, and I've been trying to up it, and just as the way it happened, I released 2 books in 1 month, blew all the readers away, and they're like, oh, this is great, when's the next one coming out? Like, give me a couple months, but yeah, I've definitely seen the sales pick up because it's the same sort of thing with fantasy readers. If you find an author that you like, chances are, if all the books have the same thing right at the beginning, other books by this author, or put a little blurb at the end. If you enjoy this book, check out some of these other ones, and you'll notice an uptick of sales from the other series as well, which is what I've noticed as well. So it works out handy.
Absolutely. I've just released a new series in the last few weeks, and I did 2 books, one week and one the following week. The next one's coming this month, so it's just getting its final polish, and there'll be another one next month. So, but that was very planned, so that I would have those releases up close and I would have those books pretty much ready to go. I've still got a little bit of work to do on the one for next month, but so certainly, making a little bit of a splash and having something there for the authors to read. And of course, as soon as I release those books, I see an uptick on sales of my previous series. So Phoenix Adventures, because the first book's with the publisher, that's a bit of a challenge for me because I can't control pricing of that. And then all the rest of the books in the series are self-published. But I've written a prequel story which will be coming out in a box set with Lindsay's pen name in July. So I'm going to jump ahead of it and then eventually look at putting that book perma-free possibly down the track to get people in, and I'll obviously still have that book. Unfortunately, the more I do with the Phoenix Adventures, the more that book sells, so I don't think the publisher's going to give me the rights back to it, but but that's okay, I'll work around it. It's a challenge with sales, with bundles, even I haven't got those books available in paperback or anything because that book's not, so I'm not sure whether I should put the rest available in paperback or not, so but future series, obviously, and Hell Squad, which is it's a alien invasion sci-fi romance, is completely self-published, and that's actually the first book's perma-free, but the rest are testing out Kindle Unlimited, so which has been really, really great for visibility, for getting the books up on the Amazon bestseller charts.
So my last question for you in this section here is, from conception to the time you release it, how long does it typically take you to write one of your books?
Well, conception might take a little longer. I've got ideas in folders all over the place of possible. I've got too many ideas, I think, than I'll ever be able to write. But certainly sitting down to write a short novel and get that edited and out to the editor takes me a month. And obviously novella is a little less than that, but then getting it out to beta readers and editor and formatter can add a few extra weeks onto that, obviously. So, and I've just recently started a launch team, so so I'm trying to build in the process of them reading that to typos and that kind of thing too. So before they're posting their reviews. So yeah. So look, with 10 books coming out this year, obviously I'm writing pretty frantically, but my baby sleeps 2 hours a day, so that's when I do my writing, rain, hail, or shine.
Well, very cool. All right, Joe, I'm going to pass her over to you, and you're up, sir.
Okay. All right. Earlier, you were talking about when you do the romance versus the action, you entered the genre from the romance angle. And I guess my first question is, when you're writing one of these, do you like fully form a romantic plot and then fold in action, or is it more of a parallel thing?
I guess it's a little bit of both. So I'm getting better at outlining now. I didn't always, especially starting out writing very short stories, I didn't always outline. I just had a rough plan for the story, and because it was short, I didn't really need to plan it out in great detail. Now I'm writing a little bit longer. I'm starting, and I want to write faster. I found I write much faster with an outline. So I do outline the plot side, the action side, and parallel to that, I have also a little outline for the romantic arc as well. So it's not, the romantic arc isn't really plotted out chapter by chapter. It's more just you know, in the first quarter of the book where the characters are at, then the next quarter where they're moving towards it, if that makes sense. So yeah, so definitely a side-by-side thing, but I do sort of treat them a little bit differently.
All right. Excellent. Now, you said earlier also that the romance versus action is kind of a balancing act. Have you ever come to a situation where you had to compromise one for the other? And if that sort of situation comes up, do you lean more toward the action or the romance?
I'll always lean a little bit more towards the romance. So like I said, coming from romance, I'm a romance reader. I'm a romance author. But I find a lot of the romance side comes out organically as I'm writing, if that makes sense. So like I said, I have a general outline for the romance, but a lot of that comes up naturally as I'm writing. And I think it's important to intertwine the two. So even in an action scene, there's something that moves the romantic, you know, arc ahead as well, if that makes sense. And that's where I know that something's not working, if I've got an action scene for action's sake and it's cool and it sounds great, but if it's not really, if my hero and heroine aren't together in it, or aren't learning something or doing something that's bringing them closer together, then it's not really going to work from the romance perspective.
That's good information. And speaking as a person who has been chided repeatedly by readers that I have an almost complete absence of romance in my stuff, what advice would you give writers who can handle action and intrigue but haven't cracked the romance code yet?
Well, first of all, you've got to love it. So if romance isn't your thing and you don't want it in there, I certainly wouldn't force it in. I'm in a few author groups and I see people, especially from the science fiction, coming from science fiction, and they want the romance readers because there's lots of them. So yeah, so I think romance readers are going to pick up on that straight away if you're trying to sell them something and you're wedging a bit of romance in there. So I wouldn't recommend that. So I think it needs to organically be a part of your story, and yeah. For pure romance readers, if you've got a touch of romance, it's not going to be enough most of the time. There'll be a core group that can switch between two, and I do read some action thrillers, and I love it when there's at least a hint of romance in those. But generally, I'm left dissatisfied if there's no romance or not enough romance. So yeah, so do it if you love it and it's true to your story. Don't wedge it in there if you're just looking for romance readers for readers' sake.
Excellent. Definitely good advice. It's gotten to the point where I have a couple of readers who will sort of engage wordplay when I release a new book that doesn't have enough for them. Like I had the steampunk novel come out, and the first one they were like, "Well, it was excellent, but I hope the next one has a little more steam in it." Oh, excellent! Yes, well done. Full points to you. So yeah, I'm gonna have to find some happy medium. But
well, I guess
Good.
The other advice would be to read some that have some steam, so that are pleasing the readers. I guess that's one thing a lot of people are saying, hey, I wrote a science fiction romance, but I've never read one, and it makes steam come out of my ears. So yeah, so read some that do have that have a lot and have a little, and I think that might help you work out, where you'll fit on the spectrum.
I definitely should. And now in the era of Kindle, I can do so without people wondering why I'm reading a book with a man chest on the cover, I suppose.
Hey, we all like a little bit of man chest.
Perhaps. Well, that's it I have for this, so I'm going to hand you back off to Lindsay for some marketing stuff.
All right. Well, on the topic of man chest, my first question is actually on cover art. I've only been I actually first found science fiction romance probably with Linnea Sinclair's books about 6-7 years ago, and but then I kind of forgot about it for a while, and I only recently refound it like last year on, I think Amazon put in the romance/science fiction category fairly recently, and boy, there's some bad cover art. It's almost like it's the last of the genres to like really be able to get away with that. So I was just wondering if you have, I mean, and I get it, it's hard to find stock photos that say science fiction and that work with it, but do you have any suggestions for authors, just like advice on good cover art and how much that can help and that kind of thing?
Yeah, look, it's so subjective, and I see, in some of our author groups, the authors going into, convulsions over what covers they like and what they don't, and look, I've come to the conclusion that, I don't always do the cover I would love to do for my books. I do a cover that's appropriate for my genre. So that means I've spent some time looking at the covers that are doing well. There are some terrible covers out there, like you mentioned, but yeah, I'm not sure how people can get away with it, but some people are. So look, there's some cues that romance readers will look for. So and man chest is one of those. The clinch is another with a couple on there, and that's a signal to the readers that you're going to get a complete romance in here and be satisfied at the end of it, I guess. So so if you just put a spaceship, that's usually a cue that this is more science fiction and possibly a touch of romance or no romance. So so look, I think getting people on the covers is important, and finding working with what's successful in the genre. So my Hell Squad series, it's very focused on the heroes, and each one's named for the heroes. So I've got man chest on there, and probably my Phoenix Adventure ones are closer. I tried to go with a movie poster feel. There's still some man chest on there, but I wanted it to look very much like a Star Wars movie poster almost. So it's vaguely reminiscent of that, but I'm not sure they do quite as well as some of the other covers. But I actually went with the cover artist of one of the popular science fiction romance authors. So even though my covers are different, I think there's still that similar feel to some of the successful covers in the genre. So that was one thing I did to target having slightly different covers for my latest series, Hell Squad.
All right, yeah, I know a lot of people probably wonder, do I have to have the kissing couple, or the man titty is actually the term I learned this past year. I've actually, sorry, I shouldn't say that as you're drinking.
Look, I rebranded Anomaly series a few months back to, I had some covers with just the heroine. They were covers very much that I thought matched the story, not necessarily gave, and they were a bit more paranormal romance based, so they kind of straddle the line between paranormal and science fiction. So at the time I was very much more targeted towards paranormal, so I've given them a stronger science fiction feel and a lot of man chest. I can't say man titty, that's just not right.
That's not allowed in Australia, right?
That's right. And look, I sell more. I don't think it's just the cover. I think that's just one part of it. But yeah, look, I think there's some covers that pop and some that don't, and you need to take a look at what's selling in your subgenre and what's doing well. So
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the first thing I tell people, like, if you're not selling, try changing the cover because you never know. That could be it can make a surprising difference.
And it doesn't have to be like super expensive. So, luckily, unlike some of the fantasy authors in that, I don't think illustrated covers are that popular in romance or science fiction romance. So, there's a lot of cover artists out there. I'll let a secret out about Hell Squad, which is my latest one, which has been my best-selling book so far, is they were pre-mades. They've been customized slightly, but I saw a pre-made cover and I thought that suited well. And then I've kept the branding very much the same in the series, just changing out the image of the couple or the man on the cover. So really quite inexpensive and some of my cheapest covers.
Yeah, I don't actually. I get to cheap my way with the pen art or the pen name stuff too, because the stock photo stuff is usually much cheaper than getting the custom illustrations, as you were saying.
Yeah.
But I would love to know next. I noticed that you're giving away a novella to encourage people to sign up for your newsletter. Are you finding that's effective, or have you found any tricks for getting new readers to sign up?
So I made after doing all my podcast listening and poring over blogs, I was like, okay, I need to focus more on my mailing list. I set up the mailing list when I set up my website because that's what author website had, and pretty much I just emailed them when I had a new release and said buy my book. But there were 200 of them that stuck with me through that. So I'm trying to get better at engaging my mailing list and obviously growing my mailing list and, giving stuff away to them and giving some value to them. So I implemented giving away a novella at the beginning of this year, and I've more than doubled my mailing list. So that's been successful. Like I said, I'm starting to engage them more and do some more giveaways and hopefully share some interesting stuff with them. So that's I've switched a lot of focus to just building the mailing list and spending less time on Twitter and Facebook. I do use those. I use Twitter a lot because I enjoy it and I enjoy chatting with people on there. But the amount of time I was spending before was not very productive, so I've had to cut that out and putting that energy where it's more productive. I'm actually probably going to offer, change that offer. So maybe add another book or two to, as I'm getting more series, I'd like to offer, maybe a book or two from different series to hopefully, let them try or sample a few of my series and go on to read the rest of it, hopefully.
Yeah, I've thought about doing the same thing with Facebook ads, giving away like my first 2 starter bundles or something like that. Do you give away something that's usually paid, or is it like exclusive to people that sign up for your mailing list?
Usually something paid, and that's purely I get a kick out of seeing that I can get something that I could go over there and buy, but I can get it free here. So I guess psychologically that has a bit more impact. Whereas something exclusive, I don't know, makes me feel like maybe someone's tossed something together and it's exclusive and you can't get it anywhere else. But for me, seeing that, okay, I can get a paid book over there, or if I sign up here, I can get a free book, is more attractive to me as a reader with my reader hat on. So, so I've only tried the one novella and it's a paid novella. And like I said, I'm going to add a couple of other paid books to that. And actually do, see how that works. So I haven't tried Facebook ads yet. It's on my long to-do list. So once I get these last 2 Hell Squad books out, I've got a bit more breathing space in my schedule. So I'm going to start playing around with the Facebook ads for building my mailing list primarily.
All right, yeah, I can definitely see where actually I like that idea because I never get around to offering anything free for the mailing list because I don't want to write something and not publish it and make money on it, you know? I know some people write stuff specifically for their mailing list, but I may have to try that, just offering something.
I don't have time. I don't have time to write something specifically for my mailing list. So you know, um, I prefer to offer them something that's already out there as a product that they can get for free. And you know, I approach them with great books that I've read from other authors, and or great free books that I might have you know, downloaded and enjoyed. So and obviously, once you've promoted some of your stuff to them a lot, then maybe giving away some of the backlist books that they may or may not have picked up, or paperbacks of those books can be popular too. So, yeah, so I'm trying to treat them better, treat them right, and hopefully, you know, be a bit more interesting and informative rather than you know, here's a new book, go and buy it.
All right, one more question from me before I pass you back to the guys. You said your new series, the Hell Squad series, is really off to a good start. Could you talk about what your launch plan and strategy was with that one?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I've done with this one. So first of all, I copied you. So I'd been following your blog, and just as I was putting out some new Phoenix Adventure stories, I saw this brand new author, Ruby Lyons Drake, appear and was doing really well and was on the bestseller list. And I was like, how does this new author just come out of nowhere and doing so well? What's she doing? Who is she? I went to her website and there wasn't really a lot of information. And then, you know, strangely on Lindsay's blog, I saw her mention this secret pen name in a romance subgenre that wasn't very big, and it all fell into place. So I'd already started doing some perma-free with some of my other series. Unfortunately, with Phoenix Adventures, it's a novella partway through the series, but it is standalone. But I would, like I said, I've got that prequel story coming soon. But Hell Squad, the first book, I made it free, and yeah, and then launched the second book a week later. And also with my mailing list, I'd been doing a little bit of pre-launch stuff with them, so got them involved in picking some stuff to do with the story and talking about heroes and that kind of thing, because these are very hero-centric stories, and they got to see the first exclusive chapters and the trailer that I had done up for it and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully by the time I actually released, you know, they'd heard interesting things about Hell Squad, not just, hey, I'm writing a new series, go buy it.
Awesome, and I'm sure it helps too that you had, you know, your mailing list already established and people that enjoy reading that kind of fiction following you along.
Yeah, so I had a small group of people, and then I made some of the other books perma-free and started offering a Phoenix Adventure novella. So I'd been collecting a few science fiction romance fans over the last few months as well. Like I said, my list had more than doubled. I did try a blog tour back when I did At Star's End with Carina Press, and I got all these people sign up, but I don't think they ever opened my emails, so I think they were just after the gift card or whatever the prize was from the blog tour. So I'm not doing blog tours anymore, and I'm not doing a lot of guest posts because they just seem to take, or blog posts, they take a long time and a lot of effort, and I'll do the ones that are interesting and appeal to me, but you know, not trying to go out there and set up blog tours, and that I think while they're very good for building a brand, don't have payback in readers at the end of the day.
Yeah, I had the same experience with blog tours. When I first got started, I was able to get a few reviews that way, which was helpful back then, but I don't know that they really contributed much to sales or anything.
What I found, especially with science fiction romance, because it is a bit niche, and because I write very action-packed science fiction romance, very action-packed everything, that's not to everybody's taste. So I find just sending stuff off, I tend to get a few, you know, mediocre reviews because they weren't expecting there to be so much action, or they weren't expecting there to be this or that. So I found it much better to very clearly state what I write, get my brand up front that I'm a action romance author, very action-packed stories, and I've been trying to, obviously attract those kind of readers to my mailing list. And since I've started my launch team, I've got a little group of people who love that kind of stuff. So I think you can get, better reviews, still honest reviews, but you're going to the people that actually like reading that kind of stuff instead of just sort of sending it all out there, and you get the spectrum of reviews then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely found that if you've got your target readers already, that you're most likely to get a positive review from people who kind of know exactly what to expect from you already.
Yeah, and look, I don't mind a negative review from someone who's really not enjoyed the story, but the reviews where it's someone who clearly shouldn't have picked the story up in the first place are the ones that, I want to try and avoid.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I know Joe can sympathize with this one probably with steampunk. You always get some reviews from people who are like, I've never read a steampunk novel before, but yeah. How'd you get my book? Why? No.
And science fiction romance is the same. Some romance reader that likes something else will pick it up free, especially for your perma-free ones. And I don't read science fiction romance ever and then leave you a really terrible review. So, so trying to, and again, it comes back to all the pieces. A really clear cover, people know what you're getting. A really clear blurb, people know what they're getting. And I make sure anywhere I can, I talk about action, adventure, romance, action-packed, lots of adventure. So people aren't, shocked and horrified when they get lots of action, adventure, and romance.
All right, well, I'm going to pass you to Jeff, but I just want to say when I was looking at your shelves behind you, I think that's a tea set back there, but I thought those were bombs. They look like old-fashioned, like cannonball-shaped bombs. So, with that,
that's my favorite teapot. I don't ever use it. I'm a tea drinker, but it's too pretty to use. So, the sugar bowl and the milk bowl, I think. So,
yeah, they've got kind of that round, black, like cartoon shape. Cannonballs exploding.
Now looking at the picture, I guess.
Okay, well, on that note, I'll pass you over to Jeff.
Yeah, don't bother looking at my background. Nothing but ugly curtains back here. So.
Oh, you do?
Yes, it's a hotel. It's a hotel. So, all right. So, have you done much online advertising? And if you have, what are your favorites?
So again, this year I've got a list of things to test and try and see what works and how much I spend and what result I get. So I had tried some in the past. I had a box set. I ran a 99-cent sale and it got picked up by e-reader News Today and did quite well. I opened up my computer one day and went, oh, what happened? My little amount of sales were very different for a few days there. I'm just through the process of trying the different ones. So I've never had a book club. I tend to write short, so that's a bit of a challenge for me in finding places to promo. So if you don't meet the minimum page requirements, then that can make it tricky. That's another challenge for science fiction romance. There's very rarely a science fiction romance category at the larger promo sites. So you end up getting lumped with paranormal romance or with science fiction, which doesn't usually work out well for a science fiction romance. I've been tending to use some of the cheaper ones that give me a little bump and don't cost me too much money. So Kindle Nation Daily's been really good, and a few of the other smaller ones. So that one I find is the best bang for your buck, or for me anyway. And I'm planning to branch out into Facebook ads, primarily to build my mailing list, not necessarily to sell books. I've heard varying things on what works well and what doesn't. Maybe with some bundles down the track or sales, I'll give that a whirl. But that's next on my to-do list. So again, I've been poring over the podcasts and blogs and making my Facebook ad strategy. So. Your question before, Jeff, you asked me, what's something that I don't like doing or is time consuming. And there's something I like doing that is time consuming, and that's playing with some graphics and things for social media and ads. I'm not great at it, but I seem to enjoy getting in there, and it just sucks the hours away, and I come out with a pretty mediocre product at the end of it, but I can't seem to stop myself. I do have some people that do my covers and that do put some more professional looking ones together for me, but it gets expensive, and romance readers do like some pretty graphics and that kind of thing in social media and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that I was thinking before, I was like, oh yeah, I should have mentioned that, the graphic design part of it. I'd never try and design my own cover, but yeah, I seem to like playing around with Twitter post pictures and Facebook post pictures and that kind of thing.
I can totally sympathize. There's times when I've actually spent several hours just trying to come up with just a basic design. I would like a graphics or something I want to use. It just does not look right, and I'd go to my wife and say, she knows the graphics much bit better than I do. I'm like, is there any way you can do this a little bit better? She'd look at it and, yeah, just a sec. How about that? I mean, like, okay, you just did in 5 minutes something better than I couldn't do in like 3 hours. So it got to the point now I don't even bother anymore. I'll just go, if I need something from her, I'll just go straight to her and say, honey, how long of a back massage do you need tonight in order for you to do this? And she'll be like, well,
you're
let's
lucky
see.
to have her. Lucky to have her if she's helping you out with that kind of stuff.
I am very lucky to have her. Okay, so I've noticed you've got several book bundles available. Do you think it's worthwhile for other authors to seek out like-minded titles and bundle them together, or do you just think the whole idea of book bundling is overrated?
Well, I'm actually, you mean with different authors in the same bundle?
Yes, different authors.
Yeah, so I'm actually in my first one coming in July, so I haven't actually done one before. I've done a few of my own books bundled together which I would say is a good thing to do, especially if you've got shorter books and you can bundle them together, price them a little higher, and potentially, if you have a sale, approach the book bubs and that kind of thing. Yeah, look, I think they're a great idea, and people have been having great success with them. And again, I'm talking primarily from the romance side that I've seen there, but I think there's been some successful ones in the fantasy world and that as well. So I think being able to hopefully cross over to some other successful authors in your genre's readers is always a good thing. And yeah, these bundles at 99 cents, it's really all about visibility and hopefully reaching out to a new pool of authors. So yeah, so my first bundle in July, super excited. There's some great authors in there. Slightly nervous. It's an action adventure box set, which is great, but there's only 2 sci-fi romance stories in there, and the rest are contemporary. So that makes me nervous in that bunch of readers going in there looking for contemporary sort of action adventure type stuff and end up on another planet far, far away. So yeah, we'll see. As long as it's clear up front that they're getting some science fiction in there, I think I can hopefully avoid some of that. But there'll be a few. I loved all the stories except those space ones.
Let's see here. I've already answered that. You already answered that question there. Okay. What is the best advertising recommendation you can make if you're tasked with coming up with a marketing strategy for, let's say, someone that's a first-time author that doesn't have a budget? What would you suggest for them to do?
Build your mailing list. So I think, if you can have a healthy mailing list and people that really like your stuff, and, I've had success with offering one of my existing products. Sure, you might lose a few sales here and there, but really it doesn't cost me anything. The book's there, it's put together. So that's been a great way to inexpensively build my list. And then hopefully as that grows, you've got a great pool of engaged readers who, when you have a new release, are going out to buy your book.
Very cool. Yeah, that's something I wish I would have started from day one, and I just recently got into it, and I was doing the same thing that you guys are doing. Is I now started offering us a little short story as incentive to get signed up, and the subscribers have taken off like crazy. So clearly, it's working there. So
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I think it's the way to go, and make sure you're mentioning that all over the place that you're offering that. So I've started, wherever I can, mentioning that, and obviously in my perma-free books, and in the books that I've got that are currently selling quite well. So I'm obviously seeing an uptick in people heading over to the website to sign up. So yeah.
Definitely. Alrighty, Joe. She's all yours.
Okie doke. We're getting toward the end of the hour, so I'm going to sort of go through these a little bit quickly.
Okay.
You sort of spoke about this earlier, but since your genre bridges multiple genres, do you ever try to target the individual, like the romance fans or the action sci-fi fans, separately, or do you always shoot for your niche?
No, I don't separate them. So I'm, like I said, I'm a romance writer. I'm a romance reader. I sometimes touch some science fiction categories that aren't science fiction romance, because there's only one science fiction romance category on Amazon. So I do, touch some categories that I feel are appropriate for my book, that are under the pure science fiction banner, but I figure romance should be welcome in there as well. And as long as it's clear from my cover and my blurb that there is romance in my story, that the people that are looking in there that do pick up my books are the ones that don't mind that. But yeah, right now I would never look at targeting science fiction authors for my science fiction readers for my science fiction romance. I don't think there's enough crossover there for me to do that successfully. So very much in my niche. And later on, like I said, I'm going to be doing some contemporary action adventure type romances. So and they'll probably the pool of readers will probably come from romantic suspense. My books won't have serial killers and some of this, or police type stuff that's popular in some of those, but there's a pool of readers, I think, that will be interested in the action adventure aspect. And there's a military romance category, so where characters have a military background as well. So yeah, so I won't be heading into science fiction or action adventure thrillers if my book is a romance. Maybe down the track, I have written a draft of a action adventure thriller there's a hint of romance, but it's not the main part of the story. If you took it out, the story would still stand alone. And I think that's the difference with romance, is if you take the romance out, your story would sort of collapse.
Okay. And I guess my last question is, it's been pointed out that writing a series, we've spoken a lot on the show, writing a series is a very helpful way to build an audience and to just get overall more book sales. And this can be tricky for romance because it's harder to have a continuous plot and recurring characters in a romance series. How do you handle this in your writing, and do you think the action element helps at all?
Romance series are actually different to series I've seen outside the genre. So we have the same series with a different couple featuring in each book usually. So so you tend to have a team of people, like Hell Squad is a team of commandos. So each character is a different hero in a different book. Recurring characters are a little bit trickier in romance. There's some successful series have been doing it, but it's not as common. Once your hero and heroine have a happily ever after, people don't really want to see them struggling again necessarily, and again and again. That's not to say you can't do it, and there's been some successful authors that have done the same couples having different challenges. But generally in romance, you've got a brand new hero and heroine, but in the same world, with the same group of people around them. So so that makes it a little easier from that perspective.
Okay, that wraps up all my marketing questions. So now we'll just send you to Lindsay for the to wrap things up.
All right. Am I unmuted here? I think so. All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show, Anna. And I should say that I actually stuck my first Ruby book in military sci-fi and space opera, and basically all the categories I could shove it into. And you might be surprised. I don't know. Your stuff with the action adventure element, I've actually gotten a lot of email from male readers that are like, truck drivers and all sorts of like really manly things you would not think would pick it up, but they're like, oh, free book, okay. So you never know. Sometimes if it's enough of that particular subgenre, like my guys are all mercenaries, so I figure military sci-fi works. You never know.
Yeah, and I have touched a few of the categories under science fiction, and I do. So there are some books that have loads of categories on there because you put in a few keywords and suddenly you get all these categories appear. So so I have done that, and surprisingly, I've had quite a few men signing up for my newsletter to get my free Phoenix Adventure novella. So, that was quite fun to see, and a few of them have emailed me. So, yeah. So I guess there's a small percentage of guys out there that like a fair bit of romance with their science fiction. But again, I don't think I would in any other way target the science fiction readers that don't read romance. Yeah, maybe touch the categories and a few of them will come over there. But, I certainly don't want to be advertising my book to science fiction readers. I want to make sure that there's some romance readers in the mix as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe it's not such a bad thing that BookBub and those guys want to stick you in paranormal romance when if you can get an ad with them.
Yeah, that's right. And I know you had some success with yours. Was yours in paranormal romance? Was that the category?
Yeah, I kept trying for science fiction, and when they finally accepted it, I had to have like 200 some reviews before they were even like, yeah, okay. That was for my free one. That's what they wanted to put it in, so I went with that. I still think with mine, and it's going to be different, I think, depending on how much romance and how much science fiction you actually have. I still think mine would go better to a science fiction audience, but I may never get to find out.
Yeah, and look, it's hard because that middle line, you don't need a lot of romance, and it's too much romance for science fiction readers. And if you go too far with diluting the romance, it's not enough for romance readers. So I find straddling the line, for me is not a good strategy. So for me, I'm firmly on the romance side. I don't have aliens abducting my heroines, and that's a trope that's obviously very popular in science fiction romance. The hunky alien, barbarian alien. I think there's plenty of room in the genre for a spectrum of stories.
Yes, I see all those alien abduction romances in the top 100 of Amazon. I'm like, I don't know if I could write one of those.
Yeah, they're popular.
Oh well, you got to write what you love. Do you have any parting advice for other authors?
Yeah, I think building on that last comment you said, when I got started just recently and getting serious about this, the first thing I sat down and said, what do I really want to write? And it wasn't paranormal romance, which is where I started. I wanted to write action romance, and for me, science fiction romance let me do that. Treasure hunters in space and invading aliens and all that kind of stuff. And I have some plans for some contemporary treasure hunters as well. So really get clear on what you love. I think I see a lot of people writing to what's popular. There's even some stepbrother alien romances have come out. Stepbrother romances are popular in contemporary romance right now for some mysterious reason. So someone's decided to write stepbrother alien romances. I don't think that that's a good long-term strategy. So write what you love, and it might take a little longer to build up and find those readers who love your stuff. But I think that's the way to go, rather than grabbing onto the thing that's most popular at the moment.
All right, Joe, you hear that? If you want to get some romance in there, stepbrother alien romances in your steampunk or science fiction, something.
That'll be the book where I'm wearing a corset in the author photo.
We look forward to it. All right, Anna, last thing, why don't you let people know where they can find you, and if there's any one of your particular books do you think they should jump into first?
Well, my website's annahackettbooks.com, and you can sign up for my mailing list and grab a free novella from the Phoenix Adventures. And but I have a few perma-free books out as well. So Hell Squad's just launched, and Hell Squad, the first book is called Marcus, and that's perma-free. So if you think you might like some romance with invading aliens and a tough team of commando heroes, then yeah, grab your free copy and check it out.
All right, I will make sure and put the links in the show notes at marketingsff.com. This is going to be show number 30, so come on by, guys, if you want to go check that stuff out. And thanks so much for coming on the show, Anna.
It's nice to meet you,
Thanks for
Anna.
having me, guys. Yeah, you too, Jeff.
So long.
Bye-bye, guys.